The space station lights were cold and blue, shining over thousands of people waiting in long lines. Vela stood near a job board, holding a data pad tightly in her hand. Her arms ached from carrying her little daughter, Kira, wrapped in an old blanket. Kira was sleeping, her tiny alien face calm. Even while the world ignored them, Vela's skin had soft green tones, her eyes a mix of gold and silver. She had once worked as a senior technician on a respected science vessel, but that was before the accident, before her partner died, before she was left alone with Kira. Now no one wanted to hire a single mother, not in this galaxy, not among these aliens. She tapped the screen again, filling out yet another job application. Position desired, engineer or technician. Experience, 8 years. Status, single parent. That last part always made them stop reading. The coalition systems had their silent rules. Single alien mothers were unstable, a risk. 2. Emotional. They didn't say it out loud, but every rejection made it clear. She sent her latest application to a distant human station, just for hope. Humans were different, she'd heard, wild and strange, but sometimes kind. Her finger hesitated before hitting submit. Then she pressed it. She sighed, knowing it would likely be ignored, just like the rest. On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Jacob Reeve sat in his office, bored. The space around the Terran outpost, Hammerlight, was calm for once, too calm actually. He scrolled through new requests for station staff, dozens of applications marked as unfit or rejected. One profile caught his eye, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest applicant. Vela, technician, alien female. Single parent. He paused. The photo showed a tired woman with strong eyes and a child beside her. His officers had already labeled the application. Ignore, low priority. But Jacob leaned forward. He read her full record. Her ship destroyed during a research mission. Her partner killed. Her survival in an escape pod with a child. Despite that, she had no criminal record. No complaints from past crews. He frowned. 8 years experience and they tossed her aside? He muttered. He called his assistant. Who blacklisted this one? He asked. No one officially, sir, the officer replied. But you know how they see single mothers' distractions. Jacob raised an eyebrow. My mother was a single parent, he said flatly. She raised 3 of us while fixing solar farms and Mars storms. The room fell silent. Vela sat on a bench, holding Kira close, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Another day was ending, and her credits were almost gone. She had only 1 meal left for Kira, and none for herself. She whispered a lullaby to the child, her voice shaking. She didn't know what would happen tomorrow. No one cared. Not here, not anywhere. Then her data pad beeped. A message blinked. Application accepted. Ticket approved. Welcome to Hammerlight Station, Commander Reeve. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, not sure if it was a mistake. Her hands trembled as she read it again and again. Someone had seen her. Someone had chosen her. Tears fell down her cheeks, but this time they were from relief. She hugged Kira tighter. A chance had come not just for a job, but for a future. One human commander had decided she was worth the risk. Back on Hammerlight, Jacob stood at the observation deck, watching the stars. He didn't know this alien woman or her child, but something in her file, something raw and quiet, had reminded him of a fight his own mother faced. He didn't care what the council thought. He had made his choice. Some risks were worth taking, and this one might just change everything. Asterisk. They called him reckless behind his back. Some even said he was too soft to be a commander. But when Jacob Reeve looked at the stars from his bridge, he didn't care what they whispered, because today, he had broken the rules for someone no one else believed in. Jacob sat at his desk, staring at the confirmation message he had just sent. Shuttle authorized. Arrival approved. Vela and child to be assigned temporary quarters. It was done. He had chosen her. A knock came at his door. Firm and angry, LT. Harrow entered. his second in command, eyes sharp, voice tight. "Sir, with all respect, why her? There are better candidates without baggage." Jacob looked up slowly. "She's a trained technician with a clean record," he said. "That's all the reason I need." "She has a child, sir," Harrow pressed. "This isn't a daycare, it's a military engineering outpost." Jacob stood, his voice low, and even. "And what do you think Hammerlight was during the Great Siege? My mother raised 3 kids while holding this place together." Harrow stiffened. Knowing he had overstepped, "She gets a chance," Jacob finished. "That's final." 2 days later, the shuttle arrived. Jacob stood at the hangar entrance. With a few officers, their expressions cold and skeptical. The hatch opened, steam hissing around it. Vela stepped out slowly, her daughter asleep on her shoulder, wrapped in a worn blanket. The room fell silent. Her eyes scanned the unfamiliar human faces, and she felt every stare like a cut. But she stood tall, her arms steady, her back straight. Jacob took a step forward. "Vela?" he asked gently. She nodded, unsure how to respond. He extended his hand. "Welcome aboard Hammerlight Station." The next hours were cold, even after the warm greeting. Vela and Kira were given a small, quiet room near the lower engine bay, not standard crew quarters, but livable. She received her assignment: support maintenance, cleaning filters, organizing parts, checking temperature valves, not engineering. Not diagnostics, just the lowest of technical tasks. Still, she accepted without complaint. Crew members watched her as she passed. Some whispering, some staring at Kira. Children were rare here, especially alien children. But Vela focused on her job, her movements sharp and efficient. She worked quietly, finished tasks ahead of schedule, and asked for more. No one praised her. But she kept working. That night, Jacob reviewed the shift logs. Vela had already completed 12 tasks in 8 hours, twice the average. He frowned and checked the engineering logs. The cooling unit in Section B had shown a sudden improvement. A note was added: "Fixed alignment manually, Vela." He smiled slightly. "She's not just trying, she's proving herself," he muttered, and still, none of his senior staff had said a word. Later that night, in her small room, Vela sat on the floor while Kira slept. Her fingers were sore, and her back ached, but there was food in her daughter's stomach and a roof over their heads. It was more than she'd had in months. She looked out the tiny window at the stars. "Thank you, human," she whispered softly. The next morning, Vela arrived early in the tools bay. She began organizing outdated parts when the power in the room flickered and died. Darkness surrounded her, only emergency lights glowing red. Alarms remained silent. It wasn't a full system alert, but something was wrong. Without hesitation, she found a manual override panel and checked the power feeds. A broken circuit had caused a loop if left alone. It would overheat and destroy 2 core units. She rewired it carefully using only her light source and memory. 10 minutes later, power returned. She didn't report it. She just went back to sorting parts, as if nothing had happened. Hours later, the chief engineer discovered her work and filed a quiet note in the system. Jacob read it that evening. Unauthorized fix by Vela saved main junction from damage. No alert issued. Action accurate. He chuckled. "She's not just surviving, she's helping more than half my crew." He leaned back in his chair. "She's not a risk," he said aloud. "She's the best decision I've made all year." Still, trouble was coming. Others didn't like that she was rising too fast. Jealous eyes watched her now, whispering in corners, and someone was planning to make her fail. But Jacob had already made up his mind. He had taken a risk, and this time, the risk was worth protecting. Vela stepped onto Hammerlight Station with quiet footsteps. The cold metal floor vibrated slightly under her boots. She held Kira close, her daughter wrapped tight in a gray blanket. The child looked around sleepily, her large eyes blinking. At the strange lights and sounds, a voice called out, sharp and flat, "Name?" Vela looked up, seeing a human officer with a tablet in his hand. "Vela." "And my daughter, Kira." she said softly. He scanned her face and then the child's. Clear, he muttered, waving her through without a smile. The docking bay wasn't busy, but it felt crowded. Every person she passed glanced at her. Some whispered, some frowned, and some just stared like she was a broken machine brought for scrap. Her skin itched under their eyes. She walked faster, holding Kira tighter. Commander Jacob Reeve watched from the command deck, his eyes on the monitors. "She's arrived," his assistant said. Jacob nodded, arms crossed, face unreadable. "She looks tired," the assistant added. Jacob's voice was quiet but firm. "She looks strong." Vela was guided to her assigned quarters. It wasn't much a single room near the engine levels. With a thin bed and a broken heater, there was one small desk, a cracked mirror, and a flickering ceiling light. But it was quiet, warm enough, and most of all safe. She laid Kira on the bed and sat beside her. For a long time she didn't speak. She just watched her daughter sleep. Then she whispered, "We made it." The next morning came fast. A loud chime woke her before dawn. A message on her pad read, "Report to Maintenance Bay 6 Shift 03 begins." She quickly dressed, brushed Kira's hair, and gave her a small meal from the emergency rations. Then she placed her in a secured sleeping pod in the room, locked safely from the inside. Vela kissed her forehead. "I'll be back soon," she promised. Maintenance Bay 6 was colder than she expected. 3 other workers were already there, 2 humans and 1 reptilian alien. None of them said hello. The team leader pointed without speaking, handing her a toolkit. "Start on those filters," he said, walking away. Vela didn't complain. She moved to the wall units and started cleaning, scraping, tightening loose screws, and testing pressure valves. Her hands remembered everything, every movement smooth and sharp. Her mind stayed focused, but her ears caught every whisper behind her. "She's the single mom, right? Reeve's pet project. She won't last a week." At lunch, she sat alone in the corner of the mess hall. Kira was still locked safely in their room, monitored through Vela's pad. The other workers passed by her table, not stopping, not greeting. She heard one laugh behind her. Why'd he bring a child into a station? What's she going to do, fix pipes with diapers? She didn't respond. She ate quietly, then returned to her shift early. She worked through the noise, the stares, and the silence that followed her everywhere she walked. That evening, something changed. As she walked past the secondary power grid, she noticed a leak, a small tube, slowly dripping coolant, almost invisible. She paused, took a reading, then followed the pipe. It led to a faulty pressure junction, one that hadn't been logged in the repair reports. She fixed it on the spot, without calling for assistance. The repair took 10 minutes. She wrote a short note in the system logs and moved on. What she didn't know was that the chief technician reviewed that log hours later, and Jacob Reeve saw it too. Later that night, Vela returned to her room. Kira was awake, drawing with her fingers on the tablet screen. Her lines were messy, but something about them made Vela pause. Shapes, angles, numbers. Kira was only 5, yet her lines looked like schematics. "Where did you see this?" Vela asked, kneeling beside her. Kira just smiled. "I dreamed it, Mama," she whispered. Vela looked at the lines again, heart pounding softly. Her daughter was different. Back in his office, Jacob read the report on the coolant pipe. No one had noticed the fault, not the sensors, not the engineers, but Vela had. "3rd day and she's already preventing damage," he muttered, tapping the screen. "She's not a risk. She's an asset." But he also knew how this crew worked. Not everyone liked sudden change. Not everyone wanted an outsider to succeed, especially one with a child. Still, Jacob had made a decision. He wasn't going to protect her like a child, but he would give her the space to prove herself fully, fairly, without bias, and if anyone tried to stop her, they would have to answer to him. The station lights never dimmed, even when Vela wanted to rest. The ceiling glowed with cold white light. She had worked 12 hours straight fixing vent shafts, welding broken floor panels, patching coolant tubes, Not one person said thank you. But she wasn't doing it for them. She was doing it for Kira. Kira coughed again. Her little body curled under a thin blanket. Her eyes half open. The air in their quarters was dry, the filter slow and dusty. Vela had already tried cleaning it twice, but the unit was old and cracked. She sat beside her daughter, brushing back her soft hair. The fever wasn't high, but it scared her more than broken reactors. She had no access to proper medical help station rules, said non-staff family received only basic care. And no one called Kira crew. When her shift began again, Vela didn't argue. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Be strong for Mama." Then she stepped out into the cold hallway, the weight of the world on her shoulders. The day was hard. She was told to clean out the hydroponic waste ducts, a job normally given to cleaning bots, but the bots were under maintenance, and she was available. No one helped her. She crawled through narrow pipes, soaked in stale water, her gloves tearing on rusted metal by the time she returned. Her jumpsuit was stained, and her hands were bleeding through thin fabric. Still, she didn't complain. She walked back to her room, sat on the floor, and wrapped her fingers in torn cloth. Only when Kira was asleep did she cry quietly into her own shoulder, so her daughter wouldn't hear. Commander Jacob Reeve stood above the main deck. Watching logs scroll on his screen, Vela's name came up again. Task after task completed early. Notes from supervisor said little, but her file was growing longer by the day. He leaned forward, zooming in on a recent note, crawled 4 meters into ductwork, cleaned by hand, no assistance requested. He tapped his fingers on the desk. "She's doing more than half the crew," he muttered, "and no one's even seeing it." Later that night, Jacob walked past the lower engineering levels, not as a commander, but just to see things with his own eyes. He passed near the tool bays and stopped. Vela was there, alone, wiping down tools long after her shift had ended. She didn't see him. She worked slowly, carefully, organizing pieces, her bandaged hands trembling slightly, and even then she still looked focused. Jacob said nothing. He turned and walked away, but his mind was racing. The next day, something strange happened. Jacob issued a direct order. Assign Vela to diagnostic crew for primary cooling array. Supervised access. It was a real job. A technical one, finally closer to her actual skills. The senior engineers raised eyebrows but followed orders. When Vela saw the message, she didn't smile. She simply stood still, holding the tablet. Eyes blinking fast, Kira hugged her leg, whispering, "Mama, does this mean you'll be fixing the big machines now?" Vela nodded, tears behind her eyes. The cooling array was dangerous work. One wrong command could shut down entire sections of the ship. Her team leader was a sharp-tongued man named Rix, who didn't like working with aliens. He gave her the hardest tasks, hoping she would fail. But Vela didn't fail. She recalibrated sensors, updated firmware, and even found a hidden error in a bypass unit. Rix frowned when she corrected him twice. He sent a report later that night, 1 line long. Vela's work was accurate, unexpectedly sharp. But back in her room, things were not sharp. Kira's fever came back. Vela held her all night, whispering lullabies from her homeworld. She couldn't afford sleep, but her child needed warmth, so she wrapped herself around her daughter and stayed like that until the alarm called her again. The next day, Jacob got a private message from one of the medics. Unauthorized child fever treatment requested. Alien. Declined. His blood ran cold. He stormed into the medical wing. Why was the request declined? "Regulations, sir," the medic answered. "Non-crew dependents require approval." "She saved your oxygen systems last week," Jacob snapped. "You're breathing because she works like 10 of you." He signed the approval himself. "Kira. Reeve Vela," he wrote, adding her to the unofficial crew list. No one argued again. Later that night, Vela walked into the medical bay, shocked to see it ready for her. Kira was treated quickly, nothing serious. Just a viral fever. Still, it was the first time someone had helped. Vela looked up and saw a message on the screen. Approved by Commander Jacob Reeve. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, not just for the medicine, but for finally being seen." The station slept, but the walls never did. Hammerlight's power systems hummed quietly, machines breathing in metal lungs. Vela had just returned from her shift, her uniform damp with coolant, her hands sore from welding. She tucked Kira into bed, the child now fully recovered and smiling again. But as she turned to rest, the lights above her flickered once, then again, and then silence. At that same moment, 2 decks above, a loud pop echoed through the engineering core. Then came the smoke. Flames burst from behind a power panel. Red warning lights lit the hallway, sprinklers activated, but the fire spread fast. It was no ordinary malfunction. Security bots rushed to the scene, followed by crew in emergency suits. The station's internal system flagged the cause. Manual tampering detected. Cooling relay junction 4. Repaired yesterday by Vela Jacob. Reeve was still half-dressed when the call came in. "Sir, we've got a fire in the core. Sabotage suspected," the voice on comm said. "Who?" Jacob asked sharply. The reply was quiet but dangerous. "Logs say." Vela was the last to touch it. Jacob's heart sank. "No, she wouldn't," he said, more to himself than anyone else. But the system didn't lie, or so they thought. Vela was pulled from her quarters by security just minutes later. She didn't fight, didn't cry. She only asked one thing. "Please, let my daughter stay warm." Kira was confused, tears forming as she was left alone. The door slid shut between them. The guards brought Vela to a dark office, where Rix and 2 other officers stood with hard faces. They pushed her file across the table. "You touched the junction yesterday." Rix snapped. "You could have killed the crew." "I fixed a loose wire," Vela said calmly. "It was overheating. I logged everything." "You logged it too well," Rix hissed. "Almost like you were covering your tracks." Jacob stormed in, ignoring everyone. He looked straight at Vela, then at the report. "Run the security footage," he ordered. "We did," said the officer. "It confirms her presence yesterday." I said run the footage. Jacob repeated, voice sharp. The screen played, showing Vela doing her job. No rush, no hiding, no strange tools. She adjusted the wiring and left, just as her log said. Then Jacob narrowed his eyes. Rewind 5 hours before the explosion. Play from 2:17 a.m. They hesitated, but obeyed. And that's when they saw it. Someone else had entered the panel room at night, wearing a stolen engineer badge, face hidden by shadows. They placed something small near the junction and walked out. It wasn't Vela, it was sabotage. The room went silent. Rix looked down, ashamed. The guards stepped back from Vela, who hadn't said a word since it began. Jacob stepped forward and unlocked her cuffs. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "We were wrong." Vela nodded slowly, her voice low. "I'm used to being blamed," she said, "but I never stop fixing what's broken." Back in her room, Kira jumped into her arms as soon as she returned. "Did the bad people hurt you, Mama?" she asked. Vela shook her head and held her tight. "No, sweet one," she whispered. "The truth saved me." Jacob didn't let it rest. He ordered a full investigation. 2 crew members were caught within hours. One of them had been angry about non-humans working engineering jobs. The other simply hated that Vela was better than him. They were removed from Hammerlight immediately. No ceremony, no delay, just gone. After that, things changed. The crew began looking at Vela differently. No one apologized to her face, but some started nodding quietly as she passed. Some even asked for help with technical issues. She always helped, without pride or bitterness. She became the silent guardian of the ship's systems, the one who found faults no one else noticed, the one who showed up before anyone called for help. One night, Jacob stood outside the engine bay and watched her work. Vela was alone, adjusting heat monitors, her daughter sitting beside her with a sketch pad. Kira was drawing again, strange shapes, clean angles, perfect patterns. Jacob stepped closer and said, What's she drawing? Vela smiled faintly. She dreams about machines, she said. I think she sees the world in blueprints. Jacob looked at the child's sketch, his eyes widened. This is a schematic for our newest reactor core, he whispered. Vela nodded. She's never seen it. He stared at the drawing, then at Vela. She doesn't just belong here, he said. She was born for this. Vela didn't reply. She just picked up a wrench and went back to work. Because that's what she did. She fixed what others broke. Something strange had appeared near Hammerlight Station. A massive glowing rift pulsed just outside the sensor range. It twisted space, blocked communication, and made the ships. Navigation systems flicker every few hours. No one knew what it was, not even the humans. Jacob Reeve stood before a room full of experts, human, alien, AI advisors, even remote links to the Terran Science Command. They stared at a strange pattern on the screen lines of code and waves that bent time and math itself. It's some kind of quantum signal, the head scientist said. We've never seen anything like it. It's talking, another whispered. But we don't understand the language. 3 days passed. Dozens of theories were written and rejected. People worked without sleep, desperate to decode the signal. If the pattern wasn't solved soon, the rift could grow or pull the entire station into it. Jacob sighed, rubbing his temples. We've tried every eye in the system, he muttered, and every mind in 3 sectors. Then he paused, glancing across the room. What about the girl? He said suddenly. The room turned silent. The girl? One officer asked. You mean the child? Vela was hesitant when Jacob came to her room. Kira is still young, she said gently. She just draws things. Jacob crouched beside the child, who was building shapes from spare circuit cards. I just want her to look at something, he said kindly. No pressure. Kira looked up with wide eyes, then nodded quietly. They walked together into the main operations room. The scientists raised eyebrows as the little girl was lifted into a chair and handed a tablet. She blinked once, tilted her head, and then started drawing. Her fingers moved fast, not random, not playful. She copied the pattern on the screen, then added lines between symbols connecting invisible paths. She smiled as she drew spirals through the data stream. 5 minutes later, she looked up and said, It's singing, Mama. What? A scientist asked, leaning in. Kira pointed at the curve she had drawn. It's a song, but it's hiding inside numbers, she said. Like a circle trapped in a square. Jacob stepped forward. Translate her lines into code, he ordered. Now, they fed her sketch into the analysis program. The computer word, processed, paused, then flashed green. Pattern recognized, sequence unlocked, transmission readable. The room exploded with noise. She did it! Someone shouted. She opened it. The rift outside pulsed once, then shrank slightly, stabilizing. They had made contact, not with a weapon, but with knowledge. Kira's sketch had revealed a hidden logic, a math-based language layered in spirals. It wasn't an attack. It was a message from something beyond, perhaps ancient tech, perhaps alien life. Either way, a 5-year-old girl had seen it clearly while others only saw noise. The scientist couldn't stop talking. She sees patterns the way others see colors. She might be a cognitive prodigy, a spatial savant. No, Jacob said quietly. She's not a tool, not a lab rat. She's a little girl with a gift, and she saved this station. Later that night, Jacob called a private meeting. Only Vela, Kira, and the head of the engineering team were present. He placed a data chip on the table. This holds the new reactor design Kira helped unlock, he said, and we're naming it after her. Vela's eyes widened. You don't have to. We do, Jacob interrupted, because now the galaxy knows who she is. And we'll protect her. Kira climbed into her mother's lap, yawning. Vela held her close and looked Jacob in the eyes. I only ever wanted her to be safe, she whispered. She will be, Jacob said. Here with us. A week later, the Galactic Research Council sent a message. They wanted to bring Kira to Earth for special training, but Jacob refused. She belongs with her mother, he wrote, not locked in a lab instead. He created something new, the Hammerlight Academy, a training program for young minds. From all species, Kira was the first student. Vela was promoted to Chief Systems Officer, the highest technical rank on the station. Not everyone liked the change, some still whispered in the dark. But the station now had a new heartbeat, and it started with the smallest girl on board. As Vela walked through the halls, now wearing her new officer badge, crew stepped aside, not out of fear, but respect. And whenever someone asked how it all began, she simply said, with crayons and a human who believed in us. News spread across the stars like a solar flare. A child had solved a code no AI could crack. A single mother had kept a warship from exploding. And both were aliens from a forgotten planet, taken in by a human commander who had broken the rules. To give them a chance on Hammerlight Station, life had changed. Vela wore her new uniform with quiet pride, silver stripes shining on her shoulder. She was now Chief Systems Officer. No one questioned her title. Because no one could match her skill, Kira, her daughter, walked beside her with a smile, carrying a small bag of tools like her mother. Together, they became a symbol, not just of survival, but of something more. Hope. Jacob Reeves stood before the Allied Fleet Council a few weeks later. The chamber was massive, voices echoing from every species, humans, felinids, Vrathi, Damari, and more. They questioned him sharply. Why did you override protocol for an alien with a child? Why? Assign top clearance to a non-human? Do you understand what this sets in motion? Jacob didn't flinch. I gave her a chance because no one else would, he said, and now my station runs better than any in your fleet. He tapped a screen, showing video logs. Vela saving the cooling core, Kira decoding the quantum signal. He ended with one line. You didn't want her, but she saved you anyway. The room fell quiet. For once, politics couldn't argue with proof after that. Job requests flooded into Hammerlight, not for Jacob, not for the station, but for Vela. Other captains wanted her on their ships. Engineers asked to learn from her. Even the Galactic Academy sent a message. We'd like her to teach. Vela stayed where she was. This station gave me a chance, she said, and I'll make sure it gives others the same. So Hammerlight changed. It became a place known for second chances. Single mothers, exiled aliens, even former soldiers. With nowhere to go, they came with nothing but under Vela's system. They built everything again. She rewrote training programs in simple steps. She made work schedules flexible for parents. She added sleeping pods near engineering for kids to nap safely. No one had ever done that before, but no one had ever asked what struggling workers needed until her Jacob Reeve, now promoted to Admiral, visited Hammerlight less often. But he always stopped by Vela's office when he came. You've turned this place into a beacon, he said one day. It's not just a station anymore, it's an idea. Vela looked out the window, where dozens of ships floated peacefully. This place saved me, she replied. Now it saves others. As for Kira, her drawings became famous across science networks. Her spiral codes inspired new translation systems. She didn't just see math, she felt it. She was invited to join Earth's top science school by age 7, but she said no. I'm not leaving, Mama. She told them simply, we build things together, one day. A reporter asked Vela during an interview, what message would you give to others? Like you, those ignored, rejected, unwanted? Vela didn't smile, she just said, your value doesn't shrink because someone else can't see it. Then she added, find someone who will. Across the stars, the message echoed, and somewhere, on a broken moon colony or a crowded station, a struggling mother saw it and believed again. It all started with one human commander, one alien mother, and a child with crayons. And the galaxy would never be the same again.